Do we have people on Zoom, Adam? Alan, sorry. Welcome this morning to the gathering at Northern Hills. I recognize all of you, so we don't have any visitors today. Who do we have on Zoom? I can't read the names. Suzanne and Joel. Hopefully we'll see some more people join us. Thank you for being here. I am going to invite you to enjoy the prelude for a minute, and during that time, if you'd like to bring a stone, come here and drop a stone in the water for anything that's on your mind that you would like to have reflected. Thank you. Michael. So, as usual, you have your announcements page, and no one has come up to me and specifically said, make sure you say this. Does anyone have anything they want to make sure gets said? And you're usually the one who does that, says that to me. We have the Lighthouse Shelter coming up. There's a discussion group. That's already happened. No, that's actually 2 weeks from Tuesday. Does anyone know how the garden is going? Has anyone started planting? I'm just curious. Yes. Yeah, good.
Yes, we've got people planting. We've got I think we've got one bed still available. The rest have been spoken for. So if you want a bed, let me know. If you go out there today, you can see that there's been a trench dug for some plumbing, so we're going to have water run out to the garden next. So that should be done shortly. It's going well.
Great. I think that's so awesome that we're doing that. I'm trying to convince Larry to join me to come up here and have a garden spot, but if he's not in it with me, the drive is not going to be happening. Okay. Okay, Andrew, would you mind lighting the chalice for us?
Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy.
The opening words today, we're going to do something a little bit different. I had found some quotes to share, and that was going to be a setup for our guest speaker, Adam. There was a miscommunication with him, and he had the service time wrong, so he was here early and had plans to leave. So I met with him outside and got the information. He's also got some stuff that I can pass out afterwards. So we'll have a service talking about the things he was going to say. It just won't be his voice. So in the meantime, I will save some of those quotes for part of that time in a moment. I will say that if anyone, today is the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. When I went to look up information about this event, the acronym is IDAHOT, like the word Idaho with a T at the end. And I thought that I was landing on like the Department of Transportation page for Idaho. It was very confusing. And apparently the O is just so the acronym is pronounceable. But it's capital, so it took a long time to figure out that that wasn't for anything. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. As a way of beginning to write mind space for that, we're going to sing a song that is called Building Bridges. This is number 1023 in the Teal hymnal. And we're going to try to do it as a round, and that idea was just born, so I'm going to hand it to Michael, and he's going to teach us how to sing it, and I'm going to go over there.
So yeah, we'll do it once through, just everyone singing, and then why don't you stay on the mic, Koa? Yeah, stay on the mic so that they can hear you. And then what I'll do is then Koa will just sing the melody, and anyone who wants to join him can join him, and then I'll sing the same melody kind of in the middle of it, and you'll see how those two things interact, much like different peoples of different beliefs interact with each other. And yeah, that's called a round, so it'll make sense once we get going here. But so this is how the melody goes. It goes,
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
sing it with me.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
Let's sing it together again.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
Now Koa.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, I reach out to make such sweet harmony. With all of our voices between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, I reach out to make such sweet harmony. With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we can make such sweet harmony.
That was wonderful. Thank you, guys.
Isn't music wonderful? I realized when we began that everything I had said at the beginning came out of the because everything that just happened made me nervous. So the music was really good for calming down and being present. And I will try to stay in that slower pace now. So I found some quotes that I thought would make a good opening, which will now be part of what we're going to discuss. But actually first, let's do the unison affirmation. We pledge to create a welcoming community that celebrates human diversity, encourages spiritual growth, fosters responsiveness to our world, and commits to the future of all children. So I talked to Adam about the title being, what do we have to celebrate on this day? And if you look on the sites, that's how it's presented. It's a celebration, and that was where I got the image of the flags. These are all kinds of different flags from within the gay community. And some of the quotes are just general statements of support. This is solidarity for people's diversity, regardless of what it's about, is an important thing that many of us care about. Other quotes are specifically targeted at hate mongering. I thought that the one that I included in the order of service from the Dalai Lama was interesting. In the practice of tolerance, one's enemy is the best teacher. And I found myself trying to imagine who is the enemy when it comes to things like hate speech, and how do I make them into a teacher to myself? I was discussing it with Larry and saying what a head scratcher it was, and he said, well, then it's perfect for the UU congregation. So that's why I included that one. The ones that I had chosen for the opening words cut across those two things, so I'll share them now. This is from Plato, and that surprised me. Homosexuality is regarded as shameful by barbarians and by those who live under despotic governments, just as philosophy is regarded as shameful by them, because it is apparently not in the interest of such rulers to have great ideas engendered in their subjects, or powerful friendships, or passionate love, all of which homosexuality is particularly apt to produce. And Stephen Fry said, the concept that really gets the goat of the gay hater, the idea that really spins their melon and sickens their stomachs, is that most terrible and terrifying of all human notions, love. And finally, George Takei, what was his character? No, Mr. Sulu,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, you're right, yeah.
I would love to try to do it in his voice. We should indeed. We should indeed keep calm in the face of difference and live our lives in a state of inclusion and wonder at the diversity of humanity. And so I chose that progression because it ends on that positive note that this is about a bigger issue than just the issue that it is. So when I met just now for a bit with Adam, he gave me some of the information he was going to present, and I'm going to do my best to represent that here. First of all, I will say that Caracol is a wonderful organization. It's been here since before I moved here. One of the things I asked him was whether or not support has grown, whether they have been able to be more effective and more successful. And partly in answer to that, he said that 5 years ago, maybe a little more, they had 40 employees, and today they have 90, so they have grown in that sense. I asked him if there was increasing support from within the community, like do they have sponsors, corporate sponsors, people who regularly donate. He mentioned some of the big names in the city, like Procter & Gamble, for example. I know that I happen to be wearing the shirt for PL Marketing, which is where Larry works, which is part of Kroger, or associated with it, and they have a big role in that too. So it is great to hear that. He has left some information if anybody wants to pick it up. That talks about, has a pamphlet for Caracol and talks about what they do. Some of their services that he wanted me to mention, most of it is the stuff that we have maybe all imagined was associated with helping the gay community. There is testing and prevention, providing PrEP and doxy-PrEP for people. One of the ones that he mentioned that I didn't think about is housing. And coming up in the later part of the summer, we have some services planned that are about homelessness, a series of them, and there is a large intersection between the impacts that people who are of the LGBTQ plus community experience that are also homeless. And so it made me very happy to know that they have a specific charge to try to help with housing. And I'm sure you're all aware that housing is an issue in general in this area of the country badly. So I had hoped when I said, what do we have to celebrate, that it would mostly be a discussion of all the things that have gotten better, and then, oh, there's a couple things that we do need to work on. And I'm going to end on the positives, because that's the way I was raised to do things. But there are a number of things that surprised me that are still difficult, or that are new that are difficult. The first one that he mentioned that is probably the most apt for today's International Day against homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia are the bans on transgendered people. So he is specifically speaking in the information he gave me about Ohio, although he did say that for most of the issues that I'm discussing, there are around 30 other states that have similar laws. Ohio has laws that now ban transgender people from using bathrooms that are against their birth gender, and in particular against participating in sports. And one of the things that he shared about that is that there's been one transgendered person so far in Ohio who attempted to play sports on a team other than their birth gender. And from that, Ohio now has laws banning that. So it is the same thing that we've seen throughout the history of our denomination and our voice for things that are overly conservative, for lack of a better way to put it, that people react. People have fear, and they think that something is going to happen from a singular event, and then they lash out against it, and suddenly we're left with this legislation that doesn't make any sense, that stays around forever because it takes such a long time to change those things. So that was one of the things he shared. The second one that was unexpected has to do with similar, it's essentially trying to prevent people from easily proclaiming their transgender status, and that is about name changing. So the laws have been made more difficult for doing a name change. Presumably, that was born out of the idea. He said originally they did something to make it more difficult to change your gender. That was like the initial response to saying we don't want to allow legislation that allows the proclamation of a transgender positive attitude. But since then, they have made it more complicated just to change your name. And this has actually spilled over to everyone. So people who are changing their name because they've gotten married or after a divorce and they want to change their name back. And there's no specificity apparently to last name, first name, it's just they made it difficult. So now women are having trouble going back to their maiden names or changing their names when they're married if they don't do it as part of the registration for marriage. So these are things that shouldn't happen. It shouldn't be the case that a law is made, first of all, to discriminate in the first place, and second of all, without realizing that it's no longer just a law about the thing that was being addressed. It has affected everyone. This should get us all riled up about doing something about that, about saying that it's not okay to discriminate, and here is a reason that we can come back at you and say, you've done this in a wrong way. The next thing that he mentioned, I don't know how much everyone here knows about this, but there are laws in Ohio, and 32 other states have the same configuration, that classify an encounter in which status about HIV is not communicated as essentially rape, as a felonious assault. The thing that shocked me is that most of them take the form of upcharges on a normal charge. So it is the case, and you can imagine where this came from at a time when people were sick and dying rapidly from AIDS, and we were scared and we didn't know what it meant and what to do, and we wanted to protect each other. So they passed laws that said if you have sex with someone and don't tell them your status, then that can be considered a felony and be classified just like rape would be. But what has happened since then is that they've extended that to things that are very general. So for example, if a person who is positive is charged with soliciting because they were having a conversation with somebody on the corner and somebody decided to have a reaction to that, or even loitering, which is essentially just standing around. So if a person is just standing around and a cop decides to confront them and whatever the interaction goes to, if it comes out that they are positive, they can be charged not with a misdemeanor, but a felony. Same thing is true for the solicitation. If I were to walk up to a car window and say, do you have a quarter for a soda, or whatever, what year are we living in, and that person had an attitude and something came from it, the fact that I was positive could mean that I would be charged with a felony, not a misdemeanor. And there are others that apply to things that happen inside correctional facilities, again, where for this person, it's a felony, for everyone else, it's a misdemeanor. So those are some of the things that are going on that shouldn't be happening, and that we would all like to support each other in finding ways to change. One of the things that is also conspicuous about those HIV laws is that transmission, actual transmission of the disease and intent are irrelevant. So for example, if someone is taking PrEP and they are not able to transmit it, the CDC has been saying for 10 years now that if you are undetectable, you cannot transmit this disease through sexual behavior. And yet, we still have laws that say if you have it and you don't say it, you're in trouble. He also pointed out that consensual behavior between adults is a two-way street. It's responsibility of both parties to want to know the information. And if one party doesn't say something, the other party didn't ask, why is that not an equal issue? So intent, as he said, for example, if you're taking PrEP and you're undetectable and you use condoms when you have an encounter with someone, that shows that you intended to be protective. But that is not in the laws. It simply says you're positive, then you get a felony. So the other thing about all of that is that these are not classed under the public health laws. So there are similar laws for, say, tuberculosis. If you have tuberculosis and you go out in public and you get someone sick, you can be charged with a crime under the public health laws. But these laws are criminal code. So even from the get-go, they have been classed differently, and that is an issue as well. So I'm pretty sure that I've covered all the information that he gave me that he was going to share. And I told him, I said, you know, the disadvantage, I'm fine for standing up and winging it. The disadvantage is you talk about these things to people for a living, and I will have to get over my discomfort saying half of these words. It was, in a conversation with him, I asked, so what can we celebrate? What can we be happy about? And he came up with a couple of things, and Michael and I just talked a little bit, and I have a few things that we can add from that. So first of all, we do have gay marriage in a number of states. It's perhaps a disappointment that it's not something everybody just said, of course, if you love each other, you should have the opportunity to say so and to live your life in that way. But that is something that's better, so we're happy about that. There is a lot of education efforts. There's a lot more institutions like Caracol that are trying to make sure that people do have the information that they need, that people are living according to those things. And then I think, well, just the fact that the big topic of discussion these days is transgender issues means that in some sense we've kind of moved forward. We took care of one thing and now we're looking at the next thing that's similar and difficult to deal with for people. So that's a kind of a positive. The thing that Michael said that I thought was particularly true and I hadn't thought of is that there's really no stigma for a lot of the younger people. They don't have the same kinds of negative associations that we do. I've met, my friend Todd said his son, when they were talking about issues about people being gay and stuff in school, and he said, oh, my friends and I just assumed everybody's bi until they prove otherwise. And it was just like no big deal. Of course, there are lots of stories about people who come out to their families and say, oh, we've known that for a long time. And it's lucky when that happens and the family is positive about it. So those are some things that we can be happy about. And I really wanted to end on the positive, but I will just add this. One of the reasons that education is so important is that we now live in a time when those of us who lived through the AIDS epidemic have seen that it's better now. We have medication that keeps it from happening, and we are able to keep people healthy even when they are sick with it. And the young people didn't see it at all. So we now have a huge population who aren't scared. Unfortunately, that means they're also not paying attention. So that's an issue that we have to figure out how do we say you still need to be concerned. For example, the sexually transmitted disease rates are higher now than they have ever been because people have gotten comfortable because they know they're safe against the one thing they were supposed to be scared of. And so we want to change that without taking back the positiveness that has come from the world being in a better place about it. And as Adam said at the end of all this, the laws have just not caught up with the science. We're in a place that is positive, and we don't have laws that reflect that. And we have laws that reflect discrimination, the desire to say that somebody is different, so they're not okay. And that's what we'd like to change.
So, yeah, so I'm going to play a musical reflection, Heart by Floor, and I'll tell you a little bit about, but I do want to say one thing with that statistic about the sexually transmitted infections being higher than ever and everything. That is also because testing is much more now.
That's true.
People get tested a lot more now than they used to. So that there's a little bit of a
There's a lot of this sort of back and
Yeah.
forth. Yeah, you're right. It's higher because people get tested. And there's a general attitude that, like, well, at least I know I can go to the doctor and get a shot and I'll be okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anyone even, I didn't really understand what this was until I talked to him today. But in addition to PrEP, which is essentially, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, he called it birth control for HIV.
Yeah.
It prevents it from happening. There's now something called doxypep, which is a medication that people take to prevent becoming infected with the other STIs for the most part. The fact that we have that is good. The fact that people are mindful enough to do so is good. On things like, what are they, Adam for Adam and Grindr, the sites where people talk to each other, there's an opportunity to say, I'm taking this and I'm taking this, that way you know that I'm safe. So those are all very positive things, but we want to be mindful of what's still left underneath there in the presumptions. The thing that sticks with me are the trans bans and the name changes. Those are things that affect everyone in ways that come from something that's wrong in the first place. So, okay. Please share about the, you
Yes,
said
yeah.
the song came
So
from-
when Koa was asking me about my opinions on music and everything, he was like, what do we have to celebrate? And the first thing that popped into my head was this song, because it was featured in a Netflix series that's very popular, especially with young kids. And the Netflix series is called Heartstopper. And it is a show that I can't imagine, if it had aired even 10 years ago, there's no way, it wouldn't have been possible. The show is all about a bunch of kids who are in queer relationships, you know, who are trans, who are homosexual, and it's about their struggles, but also just their successes. And it tells this story in a way that is, it doesn't make them into necessarily heroes or villains because of their sexual orientation. You know, it just tells their story. And when I just think of this show, I just think there's no way it would have even existed 10 years ago. And I think that's something to celebrate. And this song from it is really great, and I think it's a beautiful show, and I just really like it. So I think that the fact that those things exist in our pop culture, and that's the kind of content that kids are consuming, I think that's something to celebrate. So this is Heart by Floor.
Call me by name, this name I can't remember, I can't connect to. A vicious game, this calling to push forward, yet expect to remain. All of these moving parts from the start, we were changing. I should have seen the signs all the time. We'll be staging bigger scenes and bigger stars. It's not hard to contain it, but to never lose it. We've got the heart, it's true. Don't wanna waste love, don't wanna hurt you. Off deeper blues, we're gonna pull through, we're gonna let heart hold true. We entertain these people that we create, that we dream of, till there remains no trace of what they stand for, what they could be. All of these moving parts from the start, we were changing. I should have seen the signs all the time. We'll be staging bigger scenes maintain it, but to never lose it. We've got the heart, it's true. Don't wanna waste love, don't wanna hurt you. Lifting off deeper blues, we're gonna pull through. We're gonna let heart hold true. For so long I have lived my life listening to the wolves, looking for scraps to tear from me till I lose control. Can't take my heart, no matter how your teeth sink and pull. Won't lose my heart, won't lose my heart. Won't lose my heart. Won't lose my heart. All of these moving parts from the start, we were changing. I should have seen the signs all the time. We'll be staging bigger scenes, a bigger size. It's not hard to contain it, but to never lose it. We've got the heart, it's true. Don't wanna waste love, don't wanna hurt you. Lifting off deeper blues, we're gonna pull through. We're gonna let heart hold true. Lifting off deeper blues, we're gonna pull through. We're gonna let heart hold true.
So we had planned for there to be, does this hook on? We had planned for there to be congregational talk back with Adam. Since he's not here, if there's anything we'd like to discuss, we can just do that ourselves. Let me grab a microphone.
Oh, sorry, Ko. I can. Let me do that, Ko. This is really quiet. Thank you.
A lot of the international work that's been done, I've read about particularly places where there's more promiscuity among men in those countries, and women are very subservient. And oftentimes, men will acquire AIDS and bring it back to women, and then it will also happen with children. And so it becomes a real problem. And so I just wanted to just talk a little bit about, there's a global fund for AIDS, and one of the things is that in COVID, when COVID happened, that pushed them off track, and that they, children and adolescent girls and young women and other key populations are still being left behind with that internationally. And only 57% of children infected with HIV were getting the life-saving treatment they needed, compared with 77% of adults. And so about 660,000 kids living with HIV weren't getting the antiviral drugs, leading to about 84,000 deaths. So I think internationally, despite improvements, especially sub-Saharan African, adolescent girls and young women are more than 3 times as likely to acquire HIV as adolescent boys and young men. So I think from an international perspective, there's a lot yet to truly be done and to think about. Well, we have problems here, their problems are enormous. And
I think one of the things that's at the center of what you said and kind of implicit, we often miss, the reason that those sorts of things happen, that, and I think you mentioned, you said internationally at the end there, but I think at the beginning you mentioned in other countries this is an even bigger problem. We believe we live in a place where people are becoming more open and more willing to say, I think I feel this and I want to own it early enough in my life that I don't make those mistakes. But that's part of what it is. There's this culture of silence and fear that makes people get into relationships that are not appropriate for what they want in their life, and then they do these things secretly, and they can't talk about it, they don't think they can, and so these things end up happening to the wives and the children that shouldn't, because we live in a place where people don't talk about it. And one of the reasons that having a day like this, even for those of us who live in a place where it's better, is to remind us that we still need to help everyone understand that that fear is misplaced, and if we act out of an understanding of love, we wouldn't be living in ways that lead to those problems. But from a practical standpoint, you're right, the numbers are worse in other countries, and that's something that days like this are meant to raise the awareness for. Anybody else here? And I don't want to forget the Zoom people.
Just quickly, what does caracole mean? What's the derivation of the, it says Adam Riley of caracole. What's caracole mean? Do you know?
Those of us who've known about caracole for a while have always wondered why their symbol is the little conch shell. And I have asked many times, and I think somewhere way back in their history there's a reason for that. And I think that name is somehow associated with that particular shape of shell. Caracole is a nonprofit organization that tries to help the gay community. I think it's just here in Cincinnati, but there are similar organizations in other cities. So they share information, and they do sort of cross-fertilization between different cities and stuff. Does anyone know where he left the pamphlets? He said he left pamphlets, yeah, up here. So we have those that you can look at too that tells more about it. And I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. You asked what caracole is. It has something to do with that shell that's on their pamphlet.
My comment was also related to caracole. I first learned about it probably when it became in existence, when AIDS, I was a nurse when AIDS first was detected. And back then, from what I knew of caracole, they were almost a hospice for people dying of AIDS that had no one to take care of them and no place to go. And from what I'm picking up right now, they've been able to evolve, so they now are much more proactive, and that function isn't needed anymore, which is something to celebrate, definitely.
One of the things that I know probably the largest percentage of the population who knows about caracole and is serviced by them in some way is they are the people who have caseworkers who manage the relationship between citizens of Ohio and the programs that provide them the medication for HIV and related issues. So, and of course, because the populations that they help are often also facing other challenges, the caseworkers who work for caracole often end up participating in things like mental health management as well. And they have a close relationship with the people at the Infectious Disease Center at UC, and also with the psychiatry department there.
I also wanted to know if Adam shared any information about what, if anything, we can do. I know trying to vote out the conservatives, but I don't see that happening. But, you know, what could the average everyday person do?
The question that she asked, I think it just should stand as the question, what can we do? I was thinking that we all here know each other. We are the people who come here for sure every Sunday, or at least here on Zoom. And we all already kind of have the right attitude about this subject. And we could have said, I don't need to come today. It's just more of a thing I already know and a thing that I'm already on board for. And yes, right now, or 3 hours from now, in San Diego, at the church with 1,200 people and 2 services, there's probably the young adult group is presenting something, and the gay group is presenting something, and it's a huge deal, and would have been a draw for people who were not even Unitarian Universalists to come and find out about things. And we aren't that, but it's still important that we show up, that we care. And so I'm glad that we're having this, even if it had to be from the hip without the speaker.
Yes. Thank you, Koa. She's thanking you for stepping up and doing this today.
I want to share that Ruth just said she learned something. She didn't say what it was, but I'm glad that you felt that way. Oh, yeah. Yeah, me too. I knew of some of the felonious assault laws, but I didn't know that they had extended it to this point where they were saying, oh, you're positive, then we're going to hit you harder. You know.
You also have Suzanne on Zoom.
Oh.
Yes, I was also going to thank,
Question on Zoom?
hi, I was also going to thank COA for stepping up and telling us about this, and in spite of the fact that it made him a little bit uncomfortable, that's wonderful. I'm appalled at the laws that are listed in Ohio. I mean, I remember seeing that there were 6 laws, and they're all horrible, but the absolutely most ridiculous one is the inability to change names. And I mean, I'm a person who did change my name, and it was no big deal. I walked into a clerk of courts, I spent $100, I got a bunch of papers that I could file with Social Security and all that sort of stuff. It didn't happen in Ohio, it happened in Connecticut. But it is shocking to me that I would not be able to do the same thing today in Ohio. And I mean, frankly, I intend to find out about that, because I think that's totally ridiculous and affects a lot of people on a lot of different levels. So anyway.
So sorry, Suzanne, I didn't mean to cut you off there, sorry.
Go ahead.
My wife had to change her name recently because she changed her last name to Tacey, and it was a nightmare. Nightmare. It was horrible. So yes, it's true. It's true.
We need to change that. Thank you.
I just wanted to quickly tell you how we could help Caracol. They say on their website you can donate, volunteer, advocate, join, collect. Having access to basic hygiene and cleaning products is essential to overall healthy living for people living with HIV. Help stock our personal care item pantry, and I thought that was something we could. And the other way, which is incompetitive with GNH, however, is the Kroger, having, shopping and having them as your donation group. So, but anyhow, there are on their website ways to, that you can.
Thank you, Ann. And now Betsy has a comment.
Well, I just wanted to repeat what both Suzanne and Ruth said, is that one of the things that amazes me about this congregation is that we have people who can step up when the speaker doesn't appear and give a perfectly wonderful service. And, that just always amazes me. So I think you did a terrific job. Yes. And a couple other things. One is, it's not just AIDS that has been increasing, it's other venereal diseases that are probably because of straight relationships. And maybe that's because we have put a lot of attention to AIDS and forgotten some of the other. So maybe we need to step up and have a lot of public announcements about all of that. But thirdly, I wanted to mention a negative. Should we fear that the Supreme Court, which gave us, allowed us gay marriage, can now change their minds and take it away? And that's something that concerns me.
The question has come up a couple of times, what can we do? And one of the things that I see in all of this that is bigger than just this issue is we need to encourage everyone in the world that has the same mindset that we do to try to change the way we create laws in this country. The fact that, as Adam put it, if you looked at the laws on the books, it looks like it's still 1990 and we don't know what's happening and people are dying left and right. And that's just not true. It reflects a time period and a reality that has changed, but the laws haven't changed. And what you just said, that we have an institution like the Supreme Court for the entire country that then changes their mind about something. Same thing was true with Roe versus Wade, right? So is there something we can do that's bigger than the voice we have from this small community? And the answer is, I think, that we need to think about why it is that our process of government doesn't reflect the reality that we live in. And this is true for all kinds of things, for housing, for economics. It's a big problem, and I don't think it'll be solved Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. But seriously, I mean, we all think about these things a lot, right? Why do we live in a world that can't keep up with its changes and does not reflect the way people actually feel? And why do we have leaders who are leading us on ideas that are not the ones we have? I don't know how we change that, but that's the big problem.
We also have Joel on Zoom. You're on mute, Joel.
Is someone speaking on Zoom? Oh, hello, Joel.
You're still on mute.
Yeah, you're still muted, Joel.
You're muted. There we go.
There we go. I just wanted to inject some positivity into this discussion. I don't know how many of you have lived in Cincinnati for a significant amount of time, but there was a part of the Cincinnati City Charter called Article 12, which legally allowed employers and landowners to discriminate on the basis of, well, trans wasn't even on the radar back when the legislation was passed, but based on sexual orientation. And in 2004, many Cincinnatians, myself included, rallied around what was called the Campaign to Repeal Article 12. The headquarters in Northside was streaming with volunteers. The neighborhoods that we canvassed, I canvassed Bond Hill extensively. I was blown away by what I would think to be a culturally conservative place having so much support for the repeal of that prejudiced and biased a change to our city charter. And in 2004, we repealed it. It's now, Cincinnati can now hold its head up high and its chin up that we have been a place that has specifically stated that we do not discriminate now. While other cities never had that change to their city charter, we did, and we can say that we reacted against it and we overturned it.
Thank you, Joel.
I was just going to say that it's interesting even to hear the circle of this conversation, because we heard early on about the one trans kid who tried to play sports and lickety-split, we got a law. And one of the things that is an important part about our legislative process is that it takes so long. And part of the reason is to prevent stupid things from happening. And that kind of knee-jerk reaction in legislation, I've followed legislations closely since 1973, and that was one of the things that always struck me, is that my immediate reaction is, oh, we had to change that, and of course it never was fast. But by the time it was done, it was actually better than the change that I was originally advocating for, because it had other people's opinions in it. And so one of the biggest problems about these kind of super majority gerrymandering things, where There are people who literally will just vote for it because it says it's against trans kids. Is it never gets that opportunity. It doesn't get the opportunity for rational discussion. It doesn't get the opportunity for reasonable input. I mean, nothing. One of the things that's so interesting about the name change business is in making it hard for trans kids to do it, they've totally screwed up the system for regular everyday people. I mean, it's not unusual for married women to take their husband's name. I mean,
It's like a tradition.
it's a traditional thing, and we've made it more difficult because they're trying to get these 3 kids that they have on their radar screen. So one of it's a tough thing about legislation and laws, and it's actually a silver lining in some respects, how long it takes. And when I see something like that get through just on the spot of time, it's an example I use when I go door to door to say, yeah, see why this doesn't work? We haven't even had a chance to look at it and see how widespread it is. That's the one thing that every legislator will tell you is you cannot legislate for a particular situation, particular person. And that's exactly what that legislation is. So when people talk to you about it, use that example that our laws are built to solve problems, not attack people.
The more you see me up here, the more you'll hear me mention this movie called Mind Walk. And it is this discussion of the conflict between politics and science and religion. And the politician at one point says, at least the government as it is stays close to what people perceive to be their needs. And then the physicist, who's kind of representing the science side of things, says, but the world changes faster than people's perception of it. And although they're talking about the understanding of science, we're talking about the understanding of people. Our understanding of what it means to love everyone and to be whole as humans has changed faster than our populace perceives to be the need to be aware of. I don't know how we fix that, but we should get on it this week. Anybody else?
Just one quick thought on that, Koa, is that, if you go back to the earliest teachings of religions, it's all about, love everybody. And what's changed is the definition of who fits into everybody. And that's really, when you parse it down, that's what it comes to. And when you use the example of why would you pick that for her and not for her, and they can begin to see you do make some progress, because people do fundamentally view fairness as an important issue, but it's not easy. Where we are is not going to be an easy return, sadly.
We did an exercise in a class, it might have been high school, but we had been studying the way the Founding Fathers constructed our government, and we were essentially trying to establish that it wasn't just complex arbitrarily, that every piece of it was there to help make sure something else that could go wrong doesn't without the right process. And the exercise was to take an issue that was current and try to apply the way they originally conceived of things working without all the whips and the confusion and the house of cards that is our current political environment. And in every case, we were able to say, they covered it. They really thought of something that would have done this right if we were doing it right. And I often wonder when we talk about things like this, what our Founding Fathers would say if they could be here, if they could be modernized in their understanding of issues, and would they say, we got that? Or would they say, oh, I don't know, it seems like that's a little bit beyond what we planned for. And just the fact that almost 200 years later in a high school class, we were able to say, yeah, it's there. So the question is, how do we still stick to that? How far have we gone away from it, and what can we do to get back? And these questions are for everything, like you said. Okay, well, we now come to the time when we help support our church. If you are a guest or visitor, I don't think we have any of those, but please feel that not obligated to give. And So now it's time for sharing of joys and sorrows. And I don't know if it was Jack who originally said this phrase, sorrows are lightened and joys are brightened. That's the first time I heard it, was him saying it. And I love that it's in our order of service now. I think that's a great way of saying it. I would like to kick it off by sharing a joy. When I first started coming here in 2016, I think it was, the day that Mom and I showed up was when our fellow back there was celebrating the Muskogee, right? And they had the dancers and the drums, and it was just everything that a UU church had always been in my mind, and I loved it. And ever since then, as I've gotten close to all of you and had this sense of family here, it's exactly what I wanted. And I had been potentially pursuing getting a ministry degree when I was still a professor, and the big church in San Diego was a place where I got to do some of that. I was on the planning committee for services, and I had just always thought it would be so nice to be in a smaller church where maybe I would get the chance to do this occasionally. And our path has gone such that that's definitely happening, and it's a great joy for me. And it's also a joy that you all function as my hearing aids when I forget to wear them, so thank you.
Had lunch with my youngest grandson during the week, and he told me about my great-grandson who had gone to his father and said, "It's my teacher's birthday. Can we make cookies for her?" And they went up to his grandmother's house, and at the last minute, they made cookies for Bugatti's teacher's birthday, and I thought, my grandson must be doing a wonderful job.
First off, I want to thank the numerous writers who have sent John notes this week. He's really appreciated it. He still has a rather long, it looks like, as my granddaughter said to him, "Tapa, it looks like your head's going to fall off." It's a fairly long incision, but he is up and about. They didn't end up keeping him overnight. And the best news of it is that while they do the surgery, which is about 3.5 hours, they have all these little pins in his head and down to his foot, tracking his nerves. And literally once they raised up the spinal column to get out whatever had herniated, they were able to see action in that nerve in his foot. And so for the first time in years, when he stands up, he stands on 2 feet. And sometimes now the habit still goes, and you can see him start to pull the foot around, and I'll say, 2 feet, 2 feet. He's like, "Oh my God, you're relentless." But I'm gonna win. He knows that. But he was sorry he wasn't feeling up to coming today, but he just wanted me to thank everyone. He's really appreciated it, and he really does feel better. I think the hardest thing is that it makes him a 1/2 inch taller, because this thing they put in is bigger than whatever was there before. And so all the muscles and tendons along his shoulders and his neck are screaming in growing pains. But still in all, he's in good spirits, and we have 1 more week where they say that will still be a big issue for him, and then he should be, pretty well, and he's up and walking around. So cross your fingers. And then the other thing is, I wanted to make sure that we all collectively knew that Bev is moving to California. And so she's brought back all the financial records, et cetera, that she's been doing for years. But I really wanted to make sure that we thought of something as a congregation as a way to thank her for her efforts and her work all these years. So if we can kind of put it in our brain and think about it. So I'm not sure exactly what day she moves, because I didn't realize this stuff had come back. So. But if we can think about that, I'm happy to spearhead that if we can think of doing something good or fun or interesting for her.
Some things are joys and sorrows at the same time, like people leaving.
wanted to share that I'm super, super happy because Saturday, Rachel and I are going to the Florida Keys so she can snorkel everywhere. And it's the first vacation I've had in a decade, no, not decades, but more than 5 years. So I'm really looking forward to all the seafood. So I'll be at Rachel's a few Sundays besides the one I'll be on vacation, so I'll miss everybody. But I will Zoom. So anyway, I'm super happy about it.
And I'm delighted that you used the phrase super, super happy.
Several weeks ago, I shared that my late husband's book of poetry was being published and that a special event was planned to celebrate the event. And I'm just grateful that the event was a huge success. And I'm grateful to all the people who attended and made it a big success. So that's my joy for today.
Okay.
There he is. All right, I'll share a quick joy. We had our, this past week, we've had our friends that moved to Australia visit that we hadn't seen in three years, I think. Yeah, so it's been really cool, and hearing about the other side of the world. It's cool. It's very Canberra, yeah. Yeah.
Well, as Michael makes his way back up to play this role, I'm going to make a comment about the song that we chose here. We Are Gentle, Angry People is a song that most UUs know and is often sung on days for Pride or days like today. And sometimes when I'm planning things, I will talk out loud about it to Larry, and I was reading stanzas of songs to decide whether I liked them for this purpose. And he doesn't know much of our history. He doesn't know the song. And I read it, and he said, no, I hate that. And I was thinking about why, because I realized there was a little kernel of that for me. And I understand that we need our responses to things to push us to take action, and anger sometimes does that. But I never liked the fact that it said we're an angry people. I understand why it says that. So I love the fact that it ends reprising that verse and says we are gentle, loving people. So with that in mind, let's do that song. It's number 170 in your green book.
Justice-seeking people, and we are singing for lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing for lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, we're singing for lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing for lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing for lives. are singing, we're singing for lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for lives.
There is a YouTube video recorded by a person named Mariana Ruiz on the subject of today's celebration, Idaho, and it was titled An International Call to Action. I watched it thinking that it would have something good to say here, and it has something good to say, but just implicit in who he is and what he's talking about, and I didn't really ever hear the call to action part. So I did my best to distill from that something useful. He was talking about the fact that Pride happens at different times throughout the summer in different cities all across the country, all across the Northern Hemisphere. And in fact, in the Southern Hemisphere, where he is from, it's at the opposite time of the year. So Pride, which is meant to be a day that we have solidarity, is actually just happening kind of whenever. And he said that when he first came out, he went to some activist group that was relevant in his city, I think it was Buenos Aires, and what it meant to him was that there were a bunch of people there that day who all were standing up for the same thing, who all were finding strength to be who they were. And he said, that's why we need this day. Do we need yet another day to celebrate something with an acronym? What we need is just the constant reminder that all around the world there are people who are on our side. And when we were singing that, I remembered going to, it wasn't GA, it was something that led up to GA, and I was there with Mark Bellatini, who was one of the ministers that I knew from Meadville Lombard, and some other people, and we sang that song, and we were in a huge circle, rings of people, arms around each other, going back and forth saying, we are a gentle, loving people. And what I think we need to do when we go out in the world to do something for this day is someone we know who is transgender or homosexual or bisexual, tell them that we love them and we support them for who they are. And if you don't have that, find somebody on the street and say, what do you think about this? Because I'd like to tell you that I think that we should all love each other. Thank you.
Thanks, Koa.